I'm Becky and welcome to my channel Spoony Squared. So called because I have two invisible disabilities and I've mostly been focusing on autism right now because I'm newly diagnosed and I'm trying to process, and this is something that helps me to process, to better understand and to connect with the community and hopefully help other people in the community as well. So in today's video, I am going to show you what I did in order to first talk to my GP and explore whether autism was something that was going on. So what I did is I took every criteria from the DSM-5, which is the diagnostic standards that are used, that underpin pretty much every single assessment for autism. And I made this chart, each different part of the diagnosis in the different columns, and then I also broke it down over time, which was child/teen, young adult, and now. And I did this so that I could kind of track back what was it that was going on at different points in my life. As you know, autism is a developmental disorder, so you have to have kind of shown that it has been going on for a long part of your life, since you were pretty young. And in fact, that is one part of the DSM, of the criteria, is that it's been happening. Part C is that it's been happening from early development. So that's how I ticked off that part of the criteria, by having a look at what was going on. And I thought I would take you through everything that I put here before I went to the GP. It's not everything by any means. Now I know there's like a lot more going on, but actually this is kind of how it fits in each of the columns. So the first one is deficits in social communication and interaction across multiple contexts. So that's in many different aspects of your life, and then there's kind of subcategories under that. So there's social emotional reciprocity, reduced sharing of interests, and failure to initiate and respond. So this part is really about, like, how do you have conversations, interactions with other people? Are you doing it in a kind of standard way, or do you have some kind of deficits in your communication that stop you from being able to communicate in a neurotypical way? If you've seen other videos, you will also know that this is a deficit-related diagnostic. So what that means is it can be really, really hard to go through this because it's picking out all the things that you have a deficit in, like all the things that make you less than, the way it's worded, which really a lot of these things don't necessarily make you less than. It's just once if you don't understand them and you're trying to behave in a neurotypical way, then it maybe comes across that you have something that is less than, but really it's just something that is different in many cases. So for me, this first one was a big one. I kind of shut down and didn't share feelings from a really, really young age. If anything, I kind of got this like ickiness. So this is what I put in here. Never shared feelings. When I was young, I got told off for saying things that were hurtful to others without realizing it. I can remember being in class one day and like sniggering because somebody couldn't spell something that I thought was a simple thing, and kind of not. Again, it was definitely not directed in a malicious way at that person, but of course it came across that way. Didn't really get it. I would do things like that and not realize that it was a bad thing. And then as I got older, all I've said here is like I was withdrawn. I didn't make friends. So when I was at school, I had a group of friends, but I just remember like there being all this drama and all this, and I just really did not want to be a part of it. I very much kind of kept myself on the outside, and you know, really enjoyed the fact that I could go to gymnastics so I didn't have to hang out with people. I loved having that excuse. And again, I mean, they weren't necessarily bad people. I just didn't really feel like I got anything from relationships. And I had no desire for it. It was like, again, like something was missing. Like I had a deficit. Yeah, so this idea of kind of pretending when you ask about other people's feelings, sort of having it's. I mean, I don't script in the sense of like scripting, which I know a lot of autistic people do, but of course you have these like patterns of things that you know you're meant to ask or you're meant to say, but I don't always kind of feel it. So I'm kind of going through the motions. Um, the other thing here, which has become really apparent in more recent years, is more digital communications and how poor I am with digital communications and how much like energy, and I get quite scared actually about responding to messages and not knowing how to construct a message and how to engage with people. So I think a lot of people think I'm ghosting them a lot of the time, and I'm not. I kind of really want to maybe get in touch with them, but it feels like a massive barrier, and I find it really hard to know like what's the right thing to say, how to reach out. That particularly happens if people are asking to meet up, and I like don't know how to, like, I just freeze. And then I'm also very withdrawn and quiet in groups as well. So if I'm ever in a group situation, I say that I'm either withdrawn or quiet, or I kind of just like take center stage. Like if I'm in a leadership role, for example, then I'm kind of like, oh, I don't know, I take on that role of somebody who's guiding a conversation. But a lot, if it's in a social situation, then I will just withdraw. Honestly, I don't really go out in social situations anymore because they're just painful for me. So I often just don't kind of get it, is what's going on there. These kind of, I guess, like normal ways of being. On the next one is about non-verbal communications. So you will find with some autistic people that the kind of they might speak at just one tone of voice, or like their face won't match the expression that they're trying to, or like that they're actually feeling, or the thing that they're getting across, or they don't match what is expected, I guess. This is something that I don't really recognize in myself very much at all, and I think it's because of masking and mirroring from a really, really young age. I've been a performer. Like performing is definitely one of my top special interests. So I've had a ton of actor training. I've done, ever since I was like really little, I was on stage, and that's, I don't feel any. In fact, when I'm on stage, like I feel, I gain energy. But the feeling of kind of being in relationships, to me, like and having conversations and doing that kind of social interaction, I really, really struggle to feel like myself in those situations. So I definitely am kind of there playing a role for sure whenever I'm in any kind of situation like that, a social situation. And then the third part of deficits in social communication and interaction across multiple contexts is developing, maintaining, and understanding relationships. So what I've said here is when I was a child, I went to the gym so I didn't have to go to parties. I can remember being really stressed out at brownie camp. Just putting all the things I remembered from my past. When I went to brownie camp, I was so anxious. I was 7. It was the first time I'd kind of slept away. It was this massive group, and we had to sleep in this big hall with, I don't know, there must have been 20 children in this hall, and it was just I just felt like I was so stressed the entire time. I ended up we had to peel potatoes. I ended up cutting my finger, and I had to go home. I was so pleased about that. So that definitely happened. I was flittering. This is something you hear about where you go between groups, so you never have to get too deep in any one group. You kind of like have a person here, but, and you go between lots of different groups. Pretty common with autistic women in particular, or autistic girls. And one pattern that has repeated over and over again is that I've ended up attaching myself to like one particular person who has ended up being maybe quite a powerful person who's manipulated and bullied, and so I've been in some quite toxic relationships, so I put that here. As a young adult, I had no friends at uni. I don't see any. There's one person who I see who I did go to university with, who kind of works in similar circles to me now. But otherwise, I had some. What I've written here is when I did get into social situations, I'm easily manipulated. I had some really horrible situations. I only went out a couple of times as a university student, 2 or 3 my whole time. Or as an undergrad, and yeah, there were some really horrible situations that I was in at that time, and I won't talk about them now because that's not what this whole video is about. And then now, it's funny that I've written some of these things because I don't actually necessarily think they're all true right now, but I don't have close friendships. I actually do. I do have people who I'm close with. I think that I often get so burnt out that I'm not very good at maintaining those friendships. My friends are often built around my special interests, so most of my closest friends are gymnasts, or they're people that I work with, or they're my family, or they're people on social media who I have connected with around special interests. I definitely withdraw from social situations on the whole, and I get social anxiety, and I think it's a mixture of autism and also some bad situations I've been in, which then have now given me more anxiety in social situations. Okay, so that's part A. Part B, which is about restricted, repetitive patterns of behaviour, interests and activities. So this is stims, routines and patterns, and special interests. So this may be where it gets fun. So in terms of stims, the things that I used to do, I do kind of less of now because I got told off so much for doing these things, although I do still do them. Chewing clothes, chewing pens, chewing hair, chewing toggles, chewing everything. Yeah, having a lot of jumpers with holes in them. Eating paper, eating grass. Those are both things that I did when I was younger. Hair sucking, always kind of sat, yeah, in a pretzel-y kind of way. That's something that I do a lot. Playing with blue tack, so like, yeah, kind of using blue tack as a bit of a stim toy. Hit myself if melting down. And honestly, like the way I looked at meltdowns was something I looked into, was something that really did make me think, oh, maybe there's something going on here, because I realized that, like, for me, any kind of meltdown was just a feeling of overwhelm, and it just got too much. I'm trying to like bash it out of myself. I finger tapping, pen clicking. I still, like, every one of my pens. I say I've been like, I don't chew pens anymore. Every one of my pens is broken. Like the little I don't know, you know, the thing that you put to slide a pen into a shirt pocket. They're all broken. And then the second part is about routines and rigid patterns. And so for me, this is something that comes up. It didn't feel like it came up so much when I was young, because every day was a routine and a rigid pattern. And I really very rarely broke out of those patterns. One time I remember being on holiday, like actually the times when I do remember having some kind of meltdown when I was young was when we were on holidays. I remember it happening with my grandparents when we were on a boat once, and I couldn't decide whether I wanted to go for a walk or whether to not, and it was like I didn't know what to do, I didn't know how to make the decision, I didn't end up going, and that caused meltdown. I remember my 9th birthday, I was able to choose some earrings, and I was in a shop and I just got so overwhelmed and I melted down then, and that's really when I remember getting anxiety for the first time, like at the age of 9, and it didn't really go away from then. Gymnastics has definitely been something that has like always been part of my routine, and then when I was in my 20s, the gym, I quit gymnastics again because I burnt out, and I was going to the gym like all of the time, and this was my routine. It was like, if I just keep going to the gym, and I don't have to think about life. The thing I haven't written on here, but did definitely come up when I spoke to the doctor, was also my eating. So very rigid about like what I could eat, when I could eat. I was very controlling with my eating. I had an eating disorder for 15 years. So it's all of those things that sort of partly fall into this routine and rigid pattern part. And now routines are really important to me, and I'm trying to establish my own routines because I've been an entrepreneur. So it's a bit of a paradox, contradiction, that I really like routines, I really need routines, but like when it comes to work, I have not chosen to work in like a corporate workplace or a place that has lots and lots of routines. Although I should say one of my favorite parts of the week is when I go to gymnastics, or when I coach in gymnastics, and that's very routine and structured, and it's like that's just a nice easy way to spend my Friday evenings. If I don't have routines and processes put in place, I find it really, really hard to get going on anything. They're necessary for me to really get into anything. The next part of this, we're on part B, which is again the restricted repetitive patterns of behavior, interests and activities, is special interests. So when I was a child, maths was a special interest. I learnt my 42 times table when I was 8, and I can't remember it now. I haven't been doing my learning. I haven't been on that special interest for a while, although I do know that 42 times 42 is 1764, so that stuck. Somebody might want to check that. Gymnastics was definitely there for me as a special interest. Gymnastics, dance, acting, being on stage, performing, really important to me. And then as I got a little bit older, I started to get some of these like really intense crushes, and these are like the embarrassing things I don't even want to talk about, and I certainly was like really embarrassed about at the time. But yeah, I kind of had a weird shame thing with these special interests. I was very into Prince William for a while. It's funny because I also met Prince William as an adult and had kind of forgotten about this like huge crush I used to have. Like I put posters on the wall. That was like around the time that Diana died. I think I was, felt like I needed to support him, and I would be the right person to do that, and also to be a princess. And I was also really into Boyzone, and I was like so in love with Stephen Gately, and then he was gay, and now he's died like 10 years ago, or something, which is really sad. But I went to see Boyzone a couple of times. I screamed so much that I had to get carried out into the backstage, and Ronan Keating waved at me, so who's laughing now? I definitely have had certain TV shows that like I was really obsessed with for a while. The OC was a big one because I was really struggling. That was when I was doing my PhD, and I was really, really struggling. My life felt like the opposite of the OC, which looking back is probably a good thing, but I mean, I still want to live in Southern California, so there were like certain people that I just really wanted to spend time with and hang out with. It says the gym and people at the gym, and then there's like other small things, but it's like this, like getting really into certain music for a small amount of time and just like playing those songs on repeat over and over again. And then now, I mean, business has definitely become one of my special interests for sure, and this kind of obsession with entrepreneurship, which kind of does cross over that line a little bit into obsession, I think, but it's also me pushing back against a neurotypical corporate world that I don't feel safe in. I'm really into Instagram, social media, analytics. I list all 50 American states to calm down. Oh, I didn't put gymnastics there. I mean, gymnastics has been a special interest for my whole life. I quit gymnastics for about 10 years, and that was the worst 10 years of my life. I really struggled. I didn't realize that was why at the time. When I went back, I felt like I could like relax, that everything was well in the world again for me. And then the last part of this, B4, is to do with hyper and hypo sensitivity. So sometimes like hyper is very much associated with autism, but hypo maybe isn't. And so what I've written here is temperature. Like, I'm super sensitive to temperature. I super sensitive to certain things, like certain materials of clothes, labels. Highly sensitive to other people's movements, like leg tapping. But I love, and this is where like some people might be like, this is not this is not like an autistic person at all. I love lights, color, love certain materials like silky clothes, which, I mean, that's probably not unusual. But like fireworks, I love. Going to gigs and like live music, big shows, theatre shows, I love. It's like I need that level of stimulation to feel anything. I think it's why I love performing so much. Like, it has to be big, otherwise I can't feel it at all. So I kind of feel like I fall more on a bit of a hypo rather than a hyper on that. And then the final thing here is that you also, for the DSM-5, you also have to be showing clinically significant impairments. So that means that things have to be bad in order for you to get a diagnosis, which is really strange with something like autism, where it's like, it's not something that is just inherently a bad thing. It's a brain that works differently from a neurotypical brain, but you have to be showing up with things that are really bad. So and again, like doing this over certain age ranges. So when I was young, I had panic attacks. Since the age of 9, I had depression. Again, didn't call it that, didn't know that's what it was, just had a real sense of dread all the time. Then I've continued to have anxiety and depression, multiple burnouts, frequent meltdowns, not necessarily that other people see. And then, of course, as I mentioned before, but I didn't put on here, I had an eating disorder as well. So, and that was treated over a period of like 4 or 5 years, at the latter stages of it. And then when I wrote this, which was like a year ago, it was said I could only work 1 day a week because I was so burnt out. Just couldn't respond to any messages, getting burnt out really, really quickly over and over again. So that's kind of where the significant impairment comes in. I hope that was useful to see my chart. I then wrote this up into also like a PDF, which got sent through when I got referred, and I think probably added some of the other things that I've talked about with you today. So yeah, I hope that was helpful. I'd love to know kind of what process you went through, or where you are in the process, if this is something that you're doing, if you're seeking diagnosis, how you're going about it, what's helpful for you. And don't forget to like and subscribe and share with anyone who you think needs to see this. See you soon. Bye.